So, Indiana will go on the road to face Michigan in the Big House, and the reigning champs looking to keep their Big Ten dominance in the sport, while the Wolverines, with new head coach Kyle Whittingham, looking for an upset that could potentially punch their ticket to the CFP. Who is going to win it? Let's talk about it. So, Indiana is going to go on the road to the Big House to face the Wolverines as a 6-point favorite, a little bit less than a touchdown. I am really excited for this game. I think this game is going to be much harder for Indiana than I think most people think. Nobody's really talking about Michigan in this matchup. Same thing with kind of their other games. Michigan's going to be a huge underdog against Ohio State, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Indiana. And with this game being at home, as the Hoosiers are 6-point favorites, I personally think that is a little bit too much. Michigan, since 2020, is 37-8 at home. That is a .822 winning percentage. That is the 6th highest in Power 4 football. And with this matchup, this is my 4th highest game in the Big Ten. I personally think this game is going to be much closer than other people think. So since the Hoosiers are the reigning champs and are kind of the team that are going to be talked about the most in this game, let's start off with them. Indiana has been in the past couple of years more talented than Michigan in 24 and 25, and people looking into 2026, Indiana is viewed to have the more talented roster, but Indiana is not at home. This is going to be the road Indiana teams, which we have seen, and looking over the past 2 years, Indiana has not really done so hot on the road. You look in 2024, they play number 2 Ohio State, they lose 38-15. Then in the CFP, they play number 7 Notre Dame, the runner-up in the national championship. They lose 27-17. Both of those games look good early, not competitive past the first 5 minutes of the game. Then you look at last year when they won the national championship, how dominant they were, and they go on the road to face number 23 Iowa, and they survive a 20-15 win, where Iowa in the fourth quarter really had a chance to go and win this game. And then a couple weeks later, they go to play Penn State, which this was the week after Penn State absolutely got destroyed by Ohio State. And they should have beat Indiana. They had a late touchdown. They took the lead by 4. And then Indiana had that miraculous drive to end up winning 27-24. I will say they also did play Oregon on the road. They won that game 30-20. But overall, Indiana's coaching execution has slumped drastically when it's outside of Bloomington or when it's not on a neutral site. Even in that Oregon game, think of the Fernando Mendoza pick 6. And because of that, I don't think this should be a 6-point spread. I think this should be closer to Indiana minus 3.5, a little bit more than a field goal. I think 6.5 is too much. I think that spread is kind of discounting what Michigan has. And I think that's just because Michigan has a lot of questions that's going to have to be solved later in the year. Talking about Michigan, I think Michigan probably has the highest variance of really any team in the Big Ten and kind of playoff contention. Bryce Underwood has the talent to be far better than Josh Hoover at Indiana. The question is with Michigan, it's not talent, is can these guys, especially Bryce Underwood, be developed enough to be a net positive where, we're talking about Tommy Carr coming in for Michigan. If that happens, then Michigan could see a 6-6 season where, Bryce Underwood just really does not work out. Bryce Underwood was not developed at all under Sherrone Moore. He did not have a quarterbacks coach. It was kind of like at Colorado, we saw a couple weeks ago what Juju Lewis was talking about. We're just playing football. We're not looking at defense. We're just having fun playing football. That's kind of what Bryce Underwood was last year. Really just like no development, no offensive scheme, just hand the ball off and run the ball when you can and just throw the ball downfield because you're arm talent. And that's why, he was 8 of 18 for 60 yards against Ohio State. But now with Kyle Whittingham, we have seen proven production under Whittingham's control at his previous stop at Utah. I mean, look at Devin Dampier, Cam Rising, even Alex Smith when he took over from Urban in 2005. Even he was decent on the ground. So Kyle Whittingham is very good at dealing with dual threat quarterbacks. What is Bryce Underwood? He is a talented dual threat quarterback. He'll do great under Whittingham, whether that is this year or next year, who knows? I think the coaching for Whittingham is not going to be immediate. You look at Eric Weddle's comments over spring ball for Bryce Underwood and how the talent for him is there. The development has not progressed. That was back in spring. Obviously, we still have summer camp, what is happening just happened, and then heading into fall camp. So there is still time, and this game is in week 8. He'll have time to develop over time. And by then, I would think that, Bryce Underwood, former #1 player in his entire class, will be a viable passer in week 8 of his second year of college football. Michigan doesn't lose close college football games. When you look at all 4 of their losses last year, they were all by 11 points or more. None of them were a one-possession game. Michigan doesn't really lose one-possession games. They win them. Look at the Northwestern game. Look at Minnesota the past couple of years. They win these close games. And if they're going to lose, it's going to be by 2 possessions or more. If this game in the Big House reaches the 4th quarter and it is within 1 possession, Michigan almost always wins. It's the thing that I have hated about them the most, is the fact that you can beat them for 3.5 quarters, but my God, if that is a 6-point game in the 4th quarter, they will win. It's like the Kansas City Chiefs when they play Buffalo in the playoffs. They always just find a way to win. The only thing is there's only ever really been one team the past couple of years to beat them in a 1-possession game. When was the last time Michigan lost a 1-possession game by 8 points or less? Well, that was Indiana in 2024, Curt Cignetti's first year. They lost 20-15. Before that game, the last time someone beat them by 1 possession or less was TCU in 2022, 4 years ago. Aside from Indiana, it has been 4 years since someone has beaten Michigan by a touchdown or less. So Curt Cignetti, really the only team who's been able to crack the code to the phone booth fight that Michigan loves to play. That game was in Bloomington. Now it's in the Big House. Does Indiana still have that edge in them? I want to take a look at their rosters, as now we're going to do our matchup comparison, as I have changed how we're going to do this. We're still doing the 13 data points, but instead of everything being 1 point, it is who can get the most points out of 21. Quarterbacks are 3 points, running backs 2 points, wide receiver 2 points, tight end 1 point, offensive line 2 points, edge 2 points, defensive tackle 1 point, linebackers 1 point, cornerbacks 2 points, safeties 1 point, special teams 1 point, coaching 2 points, home field advantage 1 point. Out of a total of 21 points, who can get the most points? So starting off at quarterback with Josh Hoover and Bryce Underwood. This one I actually think is much closer than people think. I think the default reaction from everybody, even me, was go straight to Josh Hoover. But the more that I thought about it, the more I thought, okay, I'm not very high on Josh Hoover. He was at TCU. He was fine at TCU. Bryce Underwood had no development last year, and for a true freshman year, wasn't the worst thing in the world. It could have been worse. He could have got benched. And now under Whittingham, he's getting a quarterbacks coach. He's with a coach that understands quarterbacks more, a head coach that is able to, have be able to thrive with dual threat quarterbacks and know when to run him, do the RPO. You have a better receiving core now with Andrew Marsh and Jamie French. But I think overall, Josh Hoover is older. He has more experience, and now he's in a great offensive scheme, and Cignetti now being able to coach him up to his maximum potential. I think Josh Hoover gets the edge. I'm going to give the edge to quarterback to Indiana. So that is 3 points for Indiana. Now for running back, this one's interesting. Indiana has an incredibly deep running back room with Turbo Richard, Kobe Martin, and Lee Beebe. That three-headed monster of running backs with this offensive line, I'm really excited for that room. But with Michigan, some teams you kind of give them the blind check. For Michigan, it's running back. Jordan Marshall, after Justice Haynes got hurt last year, stepped up very well. I'm going to give the edge to Michigan for running back, so that's 2 points for them. Jordan Marshall was very explosive. Look early in that game against Ohio State, so I'm going to give the edge to them. Now at wide receiver, this is clearly Indiana. They have Charlie Becker, Nick Marsh. Michigan, they have Andrew Marsh, who is a young player in a couple years, maybe even this year, is going to be one of the better receivers in college football, at least in the Big Ten. But I think Charlie Becker is a top 10 wide receiver. And then you also bring in Nick Marsh from Michigan State, who I'm not the highest on, Nick Marsh, but he's a tall, older, veteran, lanky receiver. So I'm going to give wide receiver edge to Indiana. So that's 2 points for Indiana. Tight end, Indiana has Brock Schott, who is a big guy, but transferred him from Miami last year. Doesn't have a ton of production. Zach Marshall, on the other hand, has much more production, good in the running game, good passing threat after losing Klein. And he had a bunch of playing time last year and experience. Brock Schott, not so much, I don't really think. So I'm going to give the edge to Michigan for tight end. That's 1 point for them. For offensive line, both teams returned 3 starters. Michigan, very, very young at offensive line last year. They gelled more, and they're going to bring most of those guys back, 3 starters. And then for Indiana, they're also bringing back 3 starters, but they returned Carter Smith, who is probably the best tackle in all of college football. So I am going to give the edge to Indiana for offensive line. That is 2 points for them. For edge, there's a lot of options to go off of. For Indiana, you have Chidi Obiazor, you have Toby, the guy from Kansas State. Both of these guys actually transferred him from Kansas State. And then for Michigan, you have John Henry Daly, who had 11.5 sacks last year at Utah. And then you also bring in 5-star Carter Meadows. He's a true freshman. Ohio State was dying to get him. He goes to Michigan. So I'm going to give the edge room to Michigan. That is 2 points for them. Defensive tackle, I think this one is a little bit of a toss-up between Trey Pierce and Tyreek Tucker. But this coaching staff on defense, they are so disciplined in their gaps. I'm going to give this one to Indiana. That's 1 point for them. For linebackers, Elijah Hardy is a phenomenal linebacker, but really shines as a pass rusher. For Michigan, you're losing your best linebacker. You have Troy Boles, but I am going to give it to Indiana, so they get 1 point for linebacker. For cornerback room, I'm going to say it's a toss-up. Indiana has Jamari Sharp, who had the game-sealing interception in the national championship last year, and they are overall coached so well. But then for Michigan, I think they have more star power with Jair Hill and Zeke Berry. So I am going to say it's a toss-up for cornerbacks. So cornerbacks were 2 points. The toss-up, both teams get 1 point. For safeties, this one is also pretty close between Amari Farrell for Indiana and Rod Moore for Michigan. But we saw last year how much these 4th, 5th, 6-year seniors matter to teams. Rod Moore is a older guy. He's been injury prone, but assuming he's healthy, I'm going to give safety to Michigan. So that's 1 point for them. Special teams, Michigan is losing their kicker. Indiana returns Niko Radicic, and overall, Niko Radicic has had a better field goal percentage and a longer overall field goal last year. So I'm going to give special teams to them plus, and we know how good coaching is for Indiana, and special teams is really where that shines the most. So I'm going to give it to Indiana. That's 1 point for them. And then for coaching, this one is obviously, this was going to Indiana. 2 points for them. with Curt Cignetti at head coach and Mike Shanahan on the offensive side and Brian Haynes on the defensive side. They returned basically most of their coaching staff, so I'm going to give it to them. So 2 points for them, and then home field advantage, obviously that goes to Michigan, 1 point for them. So finishing it out, Indiana wins the matchup comparison 13-8. They got 13 points out of 21. That is a 62%. So I would say Indiana has a 62% chance to win this game. ESPN giving a little bit more to Indiana. They have them at 66%. I'm saying it is a 62% to 38. You can see the little circle up now, the kind of percentage of who should be favored in this game. So that is my matchup comparison. Indiana wins it by a bit, as now I want to give some of my personal thoughts and expectations for this game. So for this game, I think if someone gets in the high 20s and 30s, I would lean that to be Indiana. If both teams get into the high 20s and 30s, something is wrong. So both of these defenses are not working, because with both of these defenses, nobody should be getting into the high 20s and 30s. And if both of these teams are getting up there, then something is wrong with these defenses. And when something goes wrong for one team, the home crowd always lets you hear it. And I'm always going to lean the home team when that happens. If this game is in the 30s, I'm leaning Michigan, because something happened in Indiana where Michigan, or there's defensive touchdown. So if both of these teams get into the 30s and we get the over, then I'm leaning Michigan. If this game is a rock fight in the teens, I also lean Michigan. Indiana in 24 beat them in a rock fight, and that was at home, and they won by 5 against a 5-loss Michigan team with no offense. That team is nothing like this team in 2026 for Michigan. So if this game is really close, then I'm going to lean towards Michigan. I'd say they would have the momentum in the fourth quarter. And we've seen Kyle Whittingham in the fourth quarter. He does extremely well. If this game is in a phone booth, Indiana's done it before at home. Can they now do it on the road against a team with an offense? We will see. So talking about winning this game, what does Michigan need to do to win this game? So first, Michigan needs to be able to run the ball and be able to create yak in the RPO game. Indiana is very disciplined when it comes to this, so if they're able to crack that, then that's how this offense is going to march down the field. Whittingham is elite at running his quarterback. So in the read option game and, speed options, Bryce needs to be efficient. He probably needs to have over 100 yards rushing this game and at least 1 touchdown on the ground. If this ground attack can have 2 to 3 touchdowns from multiple different players, then that will set up Michigan to win this game. Second, Bryce in the air needs to play clean. No more 8 for 18, 60 yards and a pick. If you can be 17 to 22, a $180, a touchdown, 100 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, just under 300 total yards, 2 total touchdowns, that's how you win this game. And then third, for the coaching staff, just eliminate mental mistakes. Under Sherrone Moore, this team was a disaster. There was fighting, headbutting refs, missed assignments, coaching staffs, bad clock management. If Kyle Whittingham in 1 year can turn this culture around back to when Harbaugh was there and kind of what he had at Utah, then they will be set up well in this game. It also helps that a lot of those players from Utah are coming over. So being able to create yak in the RPO game, being able to run the ball and eliminate the mental mistakes and play clean, that is what Michigan needs to do to win this game. So now, what does Indiana need to do to win this game? First, one of the few cracks in the armor for Curt Cignetti is his teams really seem to fall apart on the road. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. And with this game being late in the year, you might have injuries, weather might be a concern, and with 107,000 people screaming at you with a quarterback who is not used to playing in road environments like this yet, at this point in the season, the biggest road venue Josh Hoover would have played at in his entire career would have been Nebraska, which is loud. It only holds 85,000 people. Michigan holds 107,000. If something goes wrong early, if you throw a pick early, can you have a short memory, ignore the noise, and move on? Second, This game is the week after you play Ohio State at home. That is the biggest game of the season for you. It is my biggest game in the Big Ten in 2026. And depending how that game ends for Indiana, there could be huge problems that open up. You know, you go Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, back to back to back. If the Nebraska and Ohio State game reveal a big hole, Michigan will exploit that. And if Indiana beats Ohio State, now the week after they go on the road, they're celebrating the biggest upset the entire year against a team that might already have 2, maybe even 3 losses already. They might sleepwalk into this game. So be able to get up, wake up, don't sleepwalk, play clean, play early. We'll see if Cignetti can get his team to do that. And then a little bit of a storyline no one's really talking about for 3. New DC for Michigan, Jay Hill, coming from BYU. He will call the defense this year. And if you think, okay, you know, BYU's defense was not great last year. Look at the Texas Tech games. Josh Hoover was at TCU last year. TCU played BYU. BYU beat TCU 44-13 with Josh Hoover going 10 for 23, 183 in the air, and 2 interceptions. This defense under Jay Hill has been able to confuse and beat Josh Hoover before, and now with John Henry Daly, who can absolutely disrupt and confuse Hoover. Josh Hoover needs to play clean because of what happened in that game happens again. If Jay Hill already kind of knows, hey, I destroyed this guy before, I know how to mess with him, he will do it again. John Henry Daly will come free. Indiana being on the road, if they can't get going early, I like my odds if I am Michigan to win this game. So for Indiana, it's not sleepwalking this game. It's not being drunk from the Ohio State game. And then can Josh Hoover overcome the code that cracked him last year at BYU? Pause. In Jay Hill. That is what Indiana needs to do to win this game. And now my prediction for this game. So, starting off in the first quarter, I think Michigan will strike first in this game, gashing Indiana in the air. When teams sleepwalk, the cracks that always show first is the execution on short plays. Then they create second-level breakthroughs that turn, a 7-yard run or pass into a 35-yard touchdown run. And I think Michigan will take the lead 7-0 in the first quarter. Indiana now down a touchdown in the first quarter. Will set up some short plays, and I think in the RPO, they'll be able to hit some receivers downfield. I think Josh Hoover will pick up some yards on the ground when the holes open up. And I think this drive gets capped off in a field goal. So now Indiana down 7-3. So now Michigan up 4. I think Bryce Underwood on the read option picks up some yards, picks up a first down. But aside from that, I think Indiana's defense hold. I think they get stopped on third down and they'll have to punt. I think Indiana will get some good field position, but on third down, I think Josh Hoover is sacked and we'll have to set up another field goal. So now Indiana down 7-6 at the end of the first quarter. Now in the second quarter, I think Bryce Underwood on the ground gets loose again, breaking a tackle and goes into the end zone as Michigan now up 8, 14-6. And wow, Indiana coming out slow, not tackling well. And today's just not the day for them, as now as they get the ball back, I think Indiana goes 3-and-out again, and Michigan will get the ball back. And now Michigan with the chance to really extend the lead over Indiana. I think to start out this drive, I think Bryce Underwood hits Jamie French over the middle, picks up a first down. But I think on fourth down, Amari Farrell breaks up a pass and stops the Wolverines, and Indiana will get the ball back. Indiana now down 8 with 3 minutes left in the half. I think they hit a wide open receiver, get all the way downfield at a 2-minute warning, but I think Josh Hoover lobs the pass to Charlie Becker in the end zone, and again, it's incomplete. Indiana will settle for a field goal as they are still down 14-9 as Michigan just kneels out the rest of the half. So now it is halftime. Michigan is up 14-9 over the Hoosiers. Now starting off the third quarter, Michigan kicks off to Indiana. They will get the ball first in the half, and I think right out of half, They have an explosive run all the way to the house. And for the first time today, Indiana has the lead 16-14 in the third quarter, as Kobe Martin with the house call takes the lead. Now Michigan behind the wheel. They are now losing this game after leading for the entire half. They have some short runs. Indiana is coached good enough where they're able to stop them. I think Michigan goes 3 and out, and they'll have to punt back to Indiana. Now with Indiana up 2, I think Josh Hoover picks up some yards on the ground and forces Michigan to stack the box, as now Turbo Richard breaking loose again, as now I think Indiana is really just able to dink and dunk their way all the way down the field, as this will be their longest drive of the game, as I think Turbo Richard and Kobe Martin gash the Michigan defense, as this drive will cap off in a long Charlie Becker touchdown. Indiana extends their lead 23-14. As now in the fourth quarter, Michigan needs points now. I think Underwood is able to pick up some more yards on the ground. I think he's going to be very productive on the ground in this game. And with how good Jordan Marshall has been, I actually think this will be the Savion Hyder game, as Savion Hyder in the second half breaks through the first level of the defense and gets Michigan all the way down in the red zone, which will cap off with a Savion Hyder touchdown to cut into the lead. Now Michigan down 23-21. Now Indiana with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They are explosive. Preston makes another huge impact play and gets Indiana all the way into Michigan territory, but this Michigan defense bunches up. They stop the Hoosiers and will force Indiana to settle for a field goal. Now Indiana extends their lead 26-21. So now Michigan, 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, down by 5. They start their drive with more dink and dunk RPOs. Buchanan now getting involved in the wide receiver core for Michigan. I think Michigan gets near midfield, and Underwood lobs a pass to Andrew Marshall, who is underthrown and intercepted. Jamari Sharp, for the second year in a row, seals a crucial game last year in the national championship, and now on the road in the Big House, as Indiana will kneel out this clock and they will beat the Wolverines 26-21 on the road in a heartbreaking loss, as Underwood throws his first interception of the game, and what I think will be the second loss for Michigan, which means now, after this, they will need to go undefeated versus the rest of their schedule if they want to get back to the college football playoff. So that is my prediction. I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. I do have the Hoosiers surviving 26-21 on the road. Let me know down in the comments, who do you guys think is going to win this game? What is your score? Give me your box score for this game. But I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. I'll talk to you guys all tomorrow, and as always, thank you.